Thank you for joining us on another episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. And today we'll be talking to Nathan. I'm excited about this episode because Nathan's one of my favorite people here at Thrust Flight. So we'll jump right into it.
Okay.
I do want to let the viewers know that we'll probably be talking a little bit about, not probably, we will be talking a bit about getting started in flight training, financial and time commitments, just a little bit of breaking the ice there, and then what a career outlook might look like, or even airline hiring trends. We'll get a little bit into some of those things, but before that, I'll allow you to kind of just give us a brief introduction if you don't mind.
No, yeah, not at all. My name is Nathan Roush. I've been with Thrust Flight for about 12 years. I'm the senior admissions advisor, which basically is just fancy for educator. We are, and we'll probably talk about this several times throughout the podcast, I'm assuming, but one of the things that we do in our department, in the admissions department, essentially, is just educate people on flight training. So again, I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but that is what I do. I work with a wonderful team of people to help educate the public, and yeah.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. A lot of I actually have students and CFIs on here all the time that said, "Yeah, I got connected with Nathan, and then before I knew it, I was in there. He gave me everything I needed to know." So I thought maybe I need to talk to that guy.
Yeah.
If you don't know, I'm just gonna do this little plug. Nathan did a lot of cool YouTube videos before I got here, and so I've been
One or two.
I've been trying to live up to what he did before I got here. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. They're not big shoes to fill. You just have to act a little goofy. That's all.
And I thought I was good at that, but I'm still trying to live up to your goofiness.
I think you probably mastered it.
We'll get there. We'll get there. And you have a little bit of experience flying, right? I don't know much about that myself.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
As commercial pilots go, I think I have maybe 300 hours, something like that, 400 hours, something like that.
Gotcha.
So the only reason I don't fly for the airlines is because I have an 11-year-old son.
Yeah.
And he's just too cool to not hang out with, and so I spend my free time hanging out with him.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's a cool life.
Well, I'm glad we have you here instead.
Well, I mean, at least I got to stay in aviation.
Absolutely, yes.
That was cool.
Yes, and I'm glad you are in aviation because I get to ask you questions when I need to know a few things.
Well, and I want to interject too.
Yes.
At 44 years old, and this is part of the education piece of it. I'm 44.
Okay. I wouldn't have known.
And I love Thrust Flight. If they don't, fire me, I'll stay here for another, or I die. I'll stay here for another 12 years.
Yeah.
This is my family. But the point is, I have the opportunity to fly for the airlines or fly for corporate or cargo or whatever. And a lot of people think that that's crazy to say at 44 because you're established, you've got a family, you've got maybe a decent income, you've got a mortgage, all of those things. But we have ways to show you how to get into this, not only as an 18-year-old, but as a 44-year-old, as a 55-year-old. I had a guy that was 61 that went through the program. So this is not just for 18-year-olds.
Do we see any sort of trend there with the sort of people who are inquiring about going to flight training?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
The industry's changed. I mean, people can afford to be career changers now. Quick example. Think of it 15, 20 years ago when the airlines weren't paying sign-on bonuses. They were paying $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 a year for a first officer, and you'd have to sit there in that first officer position, in that low rank position, low seniority position for years. Well, let's say that you came from IT, or you came from marketing, or you were a banker, and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're making, $80, $100, $150,000 a year. You can't afford, in most cases, most people cannot afford to simply put their lives on hold and then take that sort of a pay cut, right? But now the industry is completely flipped. It's a total 180, and we're talking, crazy hiring, sign-on bonuses, awesome salaries, amazing, programs like the cadet program that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I am seeing a trend.
You make it sound so appealing, even to be honest. And but people do have their concerns, right? So I guess I want to just kind of jump straight in and ask you maybe one of the big questions, uh, which I'm sure there's a lot of different answers to. But are the airlines hiring?
So it is a tricky question. The overall answer is yes.
Hmm.
Um, an immense yes, they
Okay.
are.
Okay.
But when you when you look at the news cycle,
Hmm.
right? Look at it, listen to it,
Hmm.
pick your poison.
Yeah.
Um, you hear stories about, well, the airlines aren't hiring anymore. There's no more pilot shortage. That is nonsense. What you're hearing them say is, oh, it's cyclical.
Hmm.
And therefore, what's happening is, well, we're not focused right now on our first officers.
Hmm.
We're focused on our captains.
Mm.
And so, you know, it, it's it changes all the time. But if you've got a couple of months of we're on a pause,
Hmm.
then you're going to have, several months, if not even longer,
Right.
COVID, where it's like, holy cow, put this captain's hat on and get in that airplane. We need somebody to fly it right
Right.
now. So, sometimes are they not hiring? Yes. But it's the airlines have always been cyclical forever,
Hmm.
and they always will be.
So the demands kind of are going up and down because I want to understand that myself. I talk to people.
Right.
It seems like maybe the word is that demands go up and down in terms of hiring.
That's correct. But you also have to remember the airlines are it's a very complicated industry. And
Hmm.
so what they're doing is they're constantly, it's like any other business, but even more
Right.
complicated,
Hmm.
is they're constantly moving people around.
Okay.
So, you know, oh, we're going to shift this piece over here. Ergo, we need to fill this.
Okay.
Okay, now we've just filled this. We need to get this guy
Mm.
over here, this gal over here, whomever. So now, but this is full.
Right.
So we don't need to do anything over here for now. And then it's like, oh, holy cow, it's summertime. It's high travel season. We need a lot more people than we thought.
Hmm.
Better throw out the sign on bonus,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I
So,
see what
how
you're
do we
saying.
entice people from flight schools? You pay them.
Mm.
That's one way to do it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if an airline is giving you money to work for them,
Hmm.
they have a shortage.
Right.
and ri- but to look at this from 100,000 feet,
Hmm.
you have to understand we need, and when I say we, I mean the industry as a whole,
Hmm.
hundreds of thousands of pilots,
Right.
hundreds of thousands of pilots over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
When you say that we're going to need hundreds of thousands of pilots over the next 20 years or so, can you kind of explain like why that is? How do we know that, or why would you think that?
Um, because the airlines report this. I mean,
Right.
they've been forecasting their businesses for years and years.
Okay.
But there are all sorts of reports out there,
Hmm.
from big name companies. Boeing,
Mm.
even they
Yeah.
even come out with a report every couple of
They
years
should.
that
Yeah.
talks about, the forecast of the travel forecast and all of that stuff. So and when
Right.
you look at all those things, it's the perfect storm because what if people are wondering, if they're questioning, is there really a pilot shortage and how do we know? You're going to look at a couple things. You're going to look at the number of airplanes that are being produced.
Hmm.
Um, and there are a lot of airplanes still being produced,
Hmm.
even if the 737 MAX didn't fly for a while or isn't flying for a while, it's that there are dozens of other aircraft models. I'd like to say that because um,
We think that one plane
I had
represents the whole industry.
somebody recently say to me, well, there's not going to be any room for pilots, and I said, why? And they get, well, this airplane's got a maintenance. I'm like, just because one airplane has a maintenance problem That doesn't mean that they're not going to hire pilots, but
Uh-huh.
um, all the baby boomers are
Mhm.
retiring.
Mhm.
People aren't coming out of the military and flying like they used to because the
Mhm.
military is retaining their pilots.
Mhm.
Um, because they're paying them more, they're making them sign longer contracts. Whereas before, you go into the military and then you pop out and you go be a captain for American Airlines.
Mhm.
That's the way it worked. But it's different now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to wrap that up,
Yeah.
during COVID, you had a bunch of airlines that were like, "Wow, will you please take this early retirement package?" And a lot of pilots did.
Mhm.
They're like, you know what? I'm 3 years away from retirement anyway. I
Mhm.
might as well go ahead and so we saw thousands of pilots leave.
Right. I think I talked to one of our most recent guests, and they said something like that to
Yeah.
me.
And
So,
then
yeah.
and so then when COVID was not over,
Mhm.
but because I'm not here to talk about COVID, but when that was sort of winding down
Mhm.
at a point,
Mhm.
that's when everybody started, sort of coming out of the woodwork for flight training.
Mhm.
But, and I'm going to say one more thing on this. What
Yeah.
people that are interested in aviation have to remember
Right.
is you're going to do great um, when you're on an upswing, when the industry's on an upswing, you'll
Mhm.
do great
Mhm.
um, because of the pilot shortage in
Right.
general.
Right.
But you're going to do really great if you catch it in a downswing
Mhm.
because you go through all of your pilot training that takes, a year to get the training and then an additional year to get the hours if you don't already have time built.
Mhm.
And then you'll catch it on the upswing. So,
Mm.
and
Be
and the swings are sometimes it's 9 months, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it just depends.
Right, but I mean, it's, right now, it feels okay to expect it to always come back around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the world is growing at
Yeah.
an exponential rate. People are traveling.
People wanna move, people wanna
They
travel.
want to go.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there are still a lot of people who are interested in becoming pilots, probably more than ever, if anything. It seems more accessible than ever. The industry seems more appealing than ever in comparison to what you were talking about before. It's done on 180. I guess what I want to ask is what are the most common concerns people have when they first inquire about flight training? If we can kind of take a couple steps back.
Money.
Money. And how so? Like paying for flight training or making money afterwards?
It's a combination of how am I going to pay for this?
Hmm.
Um, how? Whoops. Sorry, I tried to beat up your microphone. Um, how is it that I can um, not work for 9 months,
Hmm.
10 months while I'm in flight training?
Especially for a fast track program like this. If you're a new listener, we Thrust Flight has a fast track program. It's full time. You don't work while you do this. Other programs, who knows what you might be able to do, but
Yeah,
you can.
yeah, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and how much money am I going to make as a flight instructor?
Hmm.
Because if I get a loan, I'm going to have to repay said loan.
Right.
So, if I become a flight instructor after my training, which most people do,
Mm.
because that's the best way to build time.
Hmm.
It's the fastest way to build time. It's also a great way to just instill all the skills that you just learned.
Hmm.
Um, but um, so how am I going to pay my loan back?
Yep.
How much money am I really going to make as an airline pilot?
Mm.
Those are big concerns
Yeah.
because I mean, some of these loans, I mean, they're $100,000, $120,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
For anything, for anybody.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of money, and so it's a valid concern. And I get that question probably twice a day.
Yeah. And
But
so you have those conversations.
what? Yeah, and we have to
Hmm.
because I I mean, if my son was interested in flight training,
Mm.
I would have that at the top of the list of him to ask the flight school.
Yeah.
But what people have to realize is that um, even though that is a lot of money, because it is, um, the airlines are so generous in the way they take care of their people these days
Hmm.
that when I'm done explaining the way that an individual can actually do this
Hmm.
and pay off their loan,
Hmm.
it takes the sting out of it. and they
Mhm.
relax. You can sense them relaxing.
Mhm.
Um, because there truly is a way to do it.
Mhm.
Now, you have to obviously qualify for, certain things. Like if you want to finance, you have to, do that.
Mhm.
If you, have 48 kids and you live on a farm 100 miles from any flight school, and, this may or may not be the thing for you if you don't have any additional help.
You're right.
But it's time and money.
Yeah, time and
Those are
money.
the challenges. That's all it is. Whenever anybody asks me what do people get challenged by, what are they scared of? It's time and money.
Well, if flight training is such a a big investment, which I'm glad you said that because that's one of the things we want to talk about, right? Time and money. It's a commitment. If if people see it as such a large commitment, how do they navigate financing it? For example, would you say that most people are financing a program like this?
The majority.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Because I don't want to just group everyone together. How do people who are financing this quit working or maybe don't start working and do a training program like this?
What most people do that get a loan is they'll they'll get the amount of money,
Hmm.
they'll borrow the amount of money for um, flight training,
Right.
right? But they'll also add in on top of that
Hmm.
what's called a stipend.
Hmm.
And so the stipend can be any amount of money they want,
Hmm.
up to a certain dollar amount. I mean,
Right.
you can't borrow $5 billion.
Right.
But if you need $500 a month, if you need, I've even seen people with $4,000 or $5,000 a month stipends.
Hmm.
So they borrow that over and above the cost of the flight training,
Hmm.
and then this lender, Sally Mae, simply gives the money to the flight school.
Hmm.
Um, and we give the monthly stipend to the student. So voila, they're not working. They're focused, 7 days a week on flight training, 6, 7 days a week on flight training. They've got money in the bank that they're not having to pay on. And
That's
there you
so
go.
interesting to me because I've always wondered myself. I'm like, how are people doing this? And I'm like, okay, well, at least we're a fast track program, but it makes a bit more sense now. Um, you know, y- the loan is scary, I would think, but the way it becomes less and less scary when people describe how others do it. And I
Right.
guess what I'm wondering is, uh, I guess that makes the fast track make more sense. It's easier not to work for 9 months than it is for I say 9 months, but how well, I guess I'll go to my next question then, which is what does the typical timeline look like from zero time to making money as a pilot to getting to the airlines?
Yeah. So
Because
it's
you want to start working on that loan is how my brain goes.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I say this to everybody.
Mhm.
Get over the hump. Stop paying for flight training
Mhm.
and start getting paid.
Mhm.
And the best way to do that is to do an accelerated program.
Mhm.
And that's not a plug for ours, but I'm simply saying, if you're thinking even remotely about becoming a pilot,
Mhm.
like a professional pilot, not like, hey, I want to go rent an airplane every, couple times a year and, go putt around and,
Yeah.
show off the countryside to my, you know,
Who thing?
whatever, my boo thing. That's
Yeah.
good. I like that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you are looking for a true professional path to get you to, whatever, the
Mhm.
airlines corporate, you need to be looking at a 141 flight school and not a 61 flight school. I
Mhm.
think you asked me a question there that I didn't answer. I went on a tangent.
Oh, I guess the very last question was about the typical training timeline from zero time
Got
to
it.
making a little money to getting to the airlines. You're answering it.
Two separate pieces.
Hmm.
One is the training piece,
Mm,
which again, 9 months, right around 9 months ish.
at least
Um,
for us, right?
for us,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And then if you were to become a flight instructor, again, 13, 14, 15 months,
Hmm.
just depending on how available you are
Hmm.
as a flight instructor, how available you make yourself,
Hmm.
to our scheduling staff.
Hmm.
So the whole thing really, it's about 2 years start to finish. That's it.
You know,
It's just two components.
here I was when I was younger. I come out of high school, and I was nervous about the idea of taking out loans for college, because people talk about, well, you're not guaranteed a job and things like that. And
Right.
so, I mean, and I didn't even know enough about what I wanted to do. And I'm like, you're telling me I want to take out tens of thousands of dollars and then not know what I want to do even with that loan.
Right.
So, do you think that there's a difference between taking out a loan for like going to university for a regular degree for any other career path?
When you do go to whether it's the airlines or wherever,
Hmm.
because flying jobs are all paying better than they used to, but um, most of our folks are headed to the airlines,
Right.
to our airline partners, and they can have the confidence to be able to know that they're going to repay that loan much earlier than perhaps the loan terms themselves. I mean, you know,
Mm.
I I have people that are like, yeah, I took out a 10-year loan and paid it off in 2 years. It's like, of course,
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
just
that's
enough.
what you want to do. And
Yeah.
so it's doable. It's not like,
Okay.
oh
It's
man,
doable.
I just graduated college and, I don't have a job lined up. Um,
Hmm.
you know, everybody's trying to get a job right now. I've been talking to people recently. I talked to somebody the other day that put in, I think, 80 resumes
Hmm.
before they got a job, and it wasn't the job they wanted.
Coming out of college.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it wasn't aviation either.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. Whereas your buddy over here that decided to go to flight training, he paid $120,000, and he's over here being an airline pilot, making $120,000, paying off his loan.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
that's we don't push people,
Right.
but it is very important for the general public that's interested in aviation to understand, you know, the college path versus the civilian path. And you could
Yeah.
always go to college later.
Hmm.
Go to college online.
Yeah. You can go to college online.
30, $40,000.
You have a little spare time if you're a pilot, maybe too.
Yeah, maybe a minute or two.
Yeah, maybe a few extra minutes. Okay, well, I think that's addresses some of those concerns at least. And if people have more questions about that, I'd love to hear about that in the comments because we can always talk to you again later.
Yeah, you know where to find me.
Yeah, exactly. Y'all know where to find Nathan. He's here most of the time. Okay, so we talked a little bit about getting started in flight training, some of the financial and time commitments that go into that. One of the questions I want to ask before we move on is, what are some of the hurdles that stop people from maybe uh, finishing their flight training or maybe even getting into it in the first place? What are some of those things that make it not a good fit for someone? And maybe there's not a I don't know what you would answer to that.
Well, we already talked about, time and money. I mean,
Right.
that's a big, big showstopper
Right.
for almost everyone
Mhm.
that is committed to flight training.
Mhm.
That
Okay.
says, for that individual that says, I really, really want to do this.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to do this since I was a baby.
Okay.
For those people, time and money that's the showstopper.
Okay.
That's the brick wall.
Okay. Gotcha.
Um, but it's rare to see people start flight training
Mhm.
and sort of,
Fizzle
shake
out.
the dust off and go, you know what? Yeah, this is not really for me. Now, do
Yes.
people have things that come up in their lives?
Mhm.
Emergencies, you know, somebody, wife's got pregnant, we got to put this on hold,
Mhm.
you know, you know, God forbid death in the family, things like that. So things happen,
Right.
it's not a 100% pass rate. Nothing ever is.
Right.
But we do a pretty darn good job of getting people through. But yeah, it's people. There's not this one singular thing that people look at, the industry and go, "Oof, gosh, that's really scary. I don't think I should be doing that." Now they're concerned
Yeah.
about, whether or not it's going to tank like it did during COVID.
Right.
People ask me those sorts of questions all the time.
Mhm.
But other than that, no.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. That sounds fair enough to me. Well, then, is it really as simple as getting 1,500 hours and you're in the airlines? I mean, how do people go from completing training to getting to the airlines?
Yeah, I mean that's it. It is that simple. Now, like we were talking a little while ago,
Uh huh.
about how hiring is cyclical.
Mhm.
Um, Worst case scenario, you get your 1,500 hours. Um, you're already a cadet, with the airlines.
Mhm.
You're not flying for the airlines, but you're part of the cadet program,
Mhm.
which essentially means that you get a seniority number, and when basically, when it's your turn, you're in.
You step up to the plate.
You
Yeah.
step up to the plate. But because it is cyclical,
Hmm.
you may hit 1,500 hours and the airline's not hiring.
Hmm.
And so you may have to flight instruct a little longer.
And that's some people almost consider that our worst fear. But if you're talking about it being cyclical, well, then there's not much to be afraid of. It
There's
sounds like.
nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And,
Yeah.
and honestly, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a flight instructor for, an extra 500 hours. Hey, now you go to the airlines with 2,000 hours.
Yeah.
It's not going to make you look any better than the guy that's got 1,500 or the girl that's got 38,000 or, any better
Yeah.
or any worse.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, um, you're you're gonna get in, and
Hmm.
you're gonna get in probably pretty fast,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially in the atmosphere we're in right now.
So I think the only leaf that's the only stone that is unturned there. I almost said the wrong phrase. You know what I'm talking about, the
I know, I
cliche.
got you.
Is I mean, it sounds like it comes down to a matter of just sheer commitment and interest, almost. Like, do you really want to do it? Of course, you have to kind of qualify for some of the things that help you get
Right.
into the training. But let's say someone meets those requirements. Um, you just kind of gotta want to do it, and if you really want to do it, I guess you kind of do it.
You're committing yourself to $100,000 plus. When I first talked to you, or when Michaela first talks to you, or anybody on our team,
Hmm.
um, we are looking to make sure that you're passionate about this.
Hmm.
It's not, hey, let's sell this lady a program. Let's sell this girl a program. Let's sell this kid a program. Let's get this guy in. Because we're all pilots,
Hmm.
most of us anyway.
Hmm.
And um, I need to be able to go home at night with a clear conscience, knowing that I identified somebody that may or may not really be interested in this.
Hmm.
Um, and and generally they are. But sometimes you run into somebody that's an idealistic kind of a thing. It's like, oh, I'm
Right.
going to be a pilot and I'm going to do this. And they go up and, like on a test flight, they don't like it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want you to take that test flight.
Hmm.
I want you to talk to me. I want to hear, the passion in your voice, because what I don't want
Hmm.
is for you to, go through an admissions process, take an entrance exam, take FA written tests, do this, do that, um, you know, get a loan together, and then all of a sudden drop out of a program because you realize I really wasn't interested in this in the first place.
Right.
So one of the things I said all that to say that one of the things that I think is important
Hmm.
for any flight school, but for any individual, make sure that you want to do it. Like you said a minute ago, you want to make sure that they truly have the drive
Hmm.
and the commitment.
Hmm.
You need to make sure you have that.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, gotcha.
This is a lifelong thing.
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense.
but I did want to just round out that by saying, for anybody that is concerned about like the pilot shortage fizzled out, it has not. It has always been a cyclical industry. It always will be. So if you have any fears about it,
Hmm.
you can lay them to bed right now. I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, if my 11-year-old son walked up to me right now and he was 18 and he said, Dad, is this a good time to go into flight training? I'd say 100%, kiddo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's your answer.
Well, I appreciate you, Nathan.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you joining in and just sharing some of your experience. I guess there's not much more to say other than again that I appreciate you, and I hope that the viewers did as well. If you guys are still listening, then I'm sure you did also enjoy this episode. And if you have any questions for maybe even Nathan, leave those in the comments because I'd be happy to relay those over at a later time. Otherwise, feel free to give us a like and a subscribe. That really helps out our channel. It actually turns out that only maybe 4% of people who are listening to our podcast are actually subscribed to our channel. So if you made it this far, then maybe you're someone who should hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say.